as people have begun to talk about mental illness and things like social anxiety, it's not something that I could have said about myself or knew what I was struggling with for a lot of years. But in the last number of years, thankfully, people have begun to talk about this. And I hit a mark a number of years back where even though I could talk to a stadium of 20,000 people, I could sit on TV and talk to you with no problem. Yeah. But in small groups, I would be dealing with social anxiety. And I began to really realize, hey, this is going to be a problem. There was one night where we were doing a smaller worship night at the church, and I was in our office, and I texted my wife and I said, I don't think I can come out. I don't think I can actually get out. I had let it go and not acknowledged it or dealt with it so much that I couldn't even leave the dark of the office. So my wife said, you need to come out. And I said, I have to go. And I walked home that night from the church and fleeing from something that I was called to do. It was raining. I walked in the rain. I sprained my ankle. I fell in a mud puddle and limped home covered in mud, running from a worship service. And I thought, I have to deal with this. This is not my finest moment ever. And I began to really pray into it and look into it. And I started to see, hey, there are ways that I can be in social settings and small settings. There are little workarounds, and just talking about it actually was the best thing for it. It helped me, but it also helped others around me to help understand me.
Yeah, so interesting. And you did something in talking about it, something that's so brave. You posted on social media. You wanted to let people know, this is what I struggle with. This is what it is like. Tell me a little bit more about the response you had from people when you did that.
I did it initially because I had an incident where good friends of ours, we were planning on going out for a Christmas dinner. And they were like, Dave is being very strange tonight. And in their mind, they were like, does Dave even really like us? The reality was that I almost had an inability to go into the restaurant that night. Yeah. And they got the best that I could muster up in that moment. And just being able to share with them and go, I didn't realize how it affected others in my life. And sharing with them and go, this is actually a struggle that I haven't really talked that much about. It was so helpful for them. It was so liberating for me. And since then, we've been able to have a much better relationship and understanding. When I wrote about it, I thought, well, this is very important because there are others that are dealing with this. You said 13% of Canadians may be dealing with this social anxiety. That's a lot of Canadians. That's a lot of people. And even in a ministry context, there's a lot of pastors and leaders that are dealing privately with it. So every time I've shared about how this is a struggle, but it's not debilitating. We can overcome it. Every time I do it, I'll get business leaders or pastors or friends and go, hey, I've been struggling with this too. I know where you're coming from. And then it becomes almost a crib notes. Like you're sharing techniques and sharing stories about where it came from and how do you deal with it.
Yes, it's so interesting. And you point out some of these big leaders, some people who are in the public eye, in the spotlight, they're struggling with social anxiety. They're coming forward to you. Do you think it's surprising for people when somebody sees someone who seems very extroverted in the public eye, but then, having some social anxiety going on? What do you think about that paradigm? It's an interesting tension.
It's certainly surprising to people, but the fact that it's surprising to people is surprising to me. Yeah. Because things like mental illness don't just hit one type of person. Yeah. They don't just hit a demographic or people who you think, well, they're very sullen. They're probably dealing with it. Far from it. Yes. And that's one of the things that I've begun to learn as people have just started to talk about it. And there's been different companies that have done let's talk kind of campaigns. The first time I talked about it was on a local cable show with a group that ran the Millennial Networking Group that did a show on Blue Monday where they just broadcast for 8 straight hours because there's somebody there on the day that is kind of been tapped as one of the most depressing days of the year in January. And I said, you know what? I'm going to share my story, but I'm going to do it because I want other people to know that they're going to be okay and that there are others. And frankly, just the talking it out has been the most helpful thing for me. And I found similar reactions for others. And so this is not just it hits a kind of person. It can affect all of us, and especially right now, where we're just coming out of this pandemic time where people who have struggled probably have struggled a little bit more during this time, and others that may have not struggled with situations like this we're all a little frazzled.
Yeah.
We're all sort of on the edge. There's never been a better time to talk about this, or a more important time. I think we're at the peak maybe we've ever been as a society in going, this is happening. We can talk about it, and it's never been more necessary.
Absolutely. And, I wonder, as someone who struggles with social anxiety, and you've experienced these stops and starts in society, right? So social isolation, and then no, we can see people. How have you managed? Well, first of all, has it triggered your social anxiety more? And how have you managed your social anxiety in the faces of all of these stops and starts within society?
I've done great,
Yeah,
because we
good.
didn't have to go out to dinner with other people. And so for me, in what hits me, it's been no problem. I continue to host talk shows. I continue to speak to people. In those situations, I'm great. I'm a fish in water. It hasn't affected me at all, but I've noticed it affect different segments of the population very, very severely.
It's true.
And kids especially during this time. I think we're seeing, I don't have statistics with me, but just observational evidence, kids that probably have never had to deal with things like this are being forced to deal with things like anxiety about being around people that kids in the past haven't had to.
Well,
so I
that's
think it's
interesting.
affecting kids.
It certainly is. And, I've been reading some stats. I'm a mom, and yes, social anxiety among youngsters, it's increasing rapidly right now. They do think those pandemic connections are part of it. Say for the person watching right now who says, maybe I have some social anxiety. Maybe that's why I didn't want to go to that event. Maybe that's why I avoided that gathering. What would be some of the actual symptoms and feelings you would experience as you're facing social anxiety before you have an outing or a meeting to go to?
Well, if you probably feel, you know what's coming up in your day, and you feel dread.
Okay.
So if I know in the evening I've got to get together with a bunch of people for XYZ, by about 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I get this thing. It hits me, and I go, oh no, I can't do this. I can't go out. And then because I've shared it with my wife, because I've shared it with those who even work with me at the church, I've shared some of that stuff. They're able to encourage me. And my wife's able to go, Dave, yes, you can. Yeah. We are going to go out, or I'm going to kill you. We're going out, and then I'm able to kind of walk the steps of, all right, I'm feeling it. I'm going to take it to Jesus. I'm going to go, God, I can do this. I know it. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
Yeah.
And then I have to make a choice. And then when I'm out, I have about an hour before I have to hit a reset button. So I'll go to the bathroom and take a deep breath, or I'll go outside and just stare at the sky for a minute, or I'll excuse myself to be able to go, okay, I can do this. And then I put myself back in it because I can do it. And doing things is important.
Yes.
and so I'm not going to let it stop me. And it's not like it's a healed thing. I'm working on it.
Yeah.
I'm getting better at it. The more that I learn about it, and the more that I share with people. And I hope that those who are struggling with this today, really my encouragement is find someone to talk to about it.
Yeah.
Even just sharing it with someone who you trust is an enormous step. It's an enormous weight off your shoulders. And then I encourage you to take it to Jesus, to be able to go, God, help me understand where this came from. Sometimes it came from somewhere. I was a stutterer when I was young, and so there were incidents where I couldn't get words out of my mouth when I was young, and I had never thought about it. But there's probably little tiny pieces somewhere in the mind, which is a wild zoo sometimes, to be able to go, oh, I wonder if that, let God begin to reveal the whys. And it can actually be a very, very healing process when you admit it, and don't feel bad about it. Don't feel bad about it. And if someone gives them guff, you send them to me. I'll send them to Dave. I'll teach them what I know, which is almost nothing.
There are so many soft places to land with social anxiety or mental health issues, whether you seek out a counselor or a pastor, a friend, someone that you trust. It always has to be someone you trust. And I think what's amazing about your story is there's such encouragement that things do not have to stay that way, that healing and growth is possible. And I love statistics, so I was reading about, social anxiety is one of the mental health disorders that is the most treatable, and we see such gains as you come out of it.
Yeah.
But sometimes spiritually, like you said, we've got to get to the whys. We've got to go deeper. And a big part of that, in my journey, your journey, our journey as followers of Jesus is coming to God and saying, what is going on with me, God? Help me through this. We have a great resource for our friends at home. We have prayer lines, 1-866-273-4444. If you are struggling with social anxiety, if you are struggling with a lack of peace or fear, if you are struggling with any issue that's holding you back right now, our prayer partners are there to meet with you on the phone. You can also email them to encourage you along this journey, let you know that God can bring freedom, but also offer you different resources. We've got a lot of great resources, counseling lines that they will connect you to. Well, Dave, this has been such a blessing to be with you today, hear from you. You are such an inspiration to us.
Thanks so much. It's a pleasure to be here, Laura.